Hi friends, my name is Marina and this is Rapunzel Fiber Arts. I am very excited for our project for today because today's project is a gift. We are going to be making a hat for my dad, but it's not going to be just any hat because my father has he's a bit of a fan of a man named Jacques Cousteau. And if you don't know who Jacques Cousteau is, he is a famous marine biologist. And these are a set of books that my dad has from his childhood. They were published in 1973. And this man here is Jacques Cousteau. And the hat that he's wearing is the hat that we are going to be attempting to recreate today. It's not going to be a perfect recreation, but I'm pretty excited about it nonetheless. So, what we have to work from are these pieces of Blueface Leicester combed top. These are from Frabjust Fiber. This is one of their lamb's tail, so it's actually 5 pieces of fiber in a gradient. And the colorway is off with her red. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these the lightest 4 colors. So we're taking out this darker purplish red, leaving us with these 4. And we're gonna blend these up on the drum carder and then spin them and then knit them into a hat, much like the one Jacques Cousteau is wearing on the cover of this book. And I think my dad's going to be absolutely thrilled with it. He loves the hats that I make him, and he's been asking me for a Jacques Cousteau hat for a couple of years now. And I have never had the yarn, so now I'm going to make the yarn. So I'm going to go set up with my drum carder and set you up so that you have a good view of that. And then we'll probably do 2 or 3 passes depending on how blended I want to get these. And then we will sit down at my spinning wheel and get to spinning. And then plying and then knitting. This will be a couple days of a project for me, but it'll all be one video for you, so that'll be nice. Alright friends, so I know I just said that this is all going to be one video, this entire project, but it's actually this video is only going to cover through the finished yarn. So designing and knitting the hat is going to be a separate video. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I literally just said I would do it all this video and I decided that was a little bit too ambitious. So it's just going to be the processing and the spinning and the plying today. I also wanted to say that Jacques Cousteau is actually an oceanographer, not a marine biologist. My dad corrected me when I was talking to him about it earlier, and I wanted to clarify that here. So you can see I'm just loading the fiber onto the carder. I do this in 2 or 3 different bats just to not overwhelm my drum carder. Sometimes I find that if I try to do more than an ounce or 2, it gets really compacted, and that's not the kind of fiber I like to spin. So I have done the first pass, and now I am adding fiber for a second pass on the carder. I'm going to end up doing 3 passes on all the fiber and make a total of 3 bats. And that gets the fiber fairly well blended. After 2 passes, it wasn't quite as incorporated and uniform as I was hoping for. I want this to be a fairly uniform yarn. There's going to be a little bit of variation just because I'm combining separate colors and I'm not trying to make it a perfectly combined yarn. If I did probably 1 more pass, this would be even more well combined, but I'm happy with it having slight streaks of color just for a little bit of visual interest in the handspun yarn and in the final product. So I'm just wrapping these up and I will have 3 bats to show you. Alright friends, we now have 3 big, poofy, red bats, and these are all set to go onto my spinning wheel. So it's time to get to spinning, and I'm really happy with how these turned out. They're nice and airy. I think that they're gonna spin very well, and the colors are nicely blended, so it's not perfect. It's gonna be a little bit heathered, but it's gonna be a pretty homogeneous yarn. It's not gonna be like strips of color or anything like that, which is what my dad wants. So he'll be happy, I'm happy, and it's time to get to spinning. All right, friends, so now I am taking the bats, the 3 bats that I have, I'm dividing them each in half, and then in half again to make quarters. And then I take that quarter of a bat and wrap it around my hand to make a little nest of fiber. That's what this is called, a nest, just like a bird's nest, because that's kind of what it looks like. And I'm just going to repeat this process with all of the strips from this bat, and then repeat it again with the other 2 bats that I've made. And this just gets the fiber a little less unwieldy, so it's a little bit more manageable in my lap to just have a quarter of a bat than an entire bat. It also makes it a little bit more like roving, which I find easier to spin. So I'm wrapping this up, and then we can get to spinning. All right, friends, so here are all of these bats, which I stripped into quarters and made into little nests. So these are all 12 of our little nests of carded red fiber, and the next step is going to be getting to spinning. All right, friends, so here I go, taking the first little section of bat that I divided up and getting it started with my leader thread on my spinning wheel. I think I just realized that I didn't actually have the brake band on, which I obviously need. So I'm gonna hopefully add that on and get to spinning. So now this is going a little bit more smoothly, and I am just slowly drafting back the fiber in my right hand. Oh, here I go doing a little pie back sample to make sure I like how the yarn looks. But I am pulling back with the hand that's holding my fiber supply, and then using the pinch of my other hand to control the twist as it enters the fiber supply. And then I'm using my 2 hands to draft apart the fibers, to separate them, elongate them, and make overall thinner yarn. I still haven't thrown together a how to spin yarn video. It is on my to-do list. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But you can see I'm just working away at spinning this yarn, moving the hook on the flyer arms so that I don't build up too much yarn in one location. And just continuing that process of spinning and moving the flyer pretty continuously. I think I only show you the first 1 or 2 of those little nests that I made, just at the risk of getting really repetitive and honestly kind of boring. I feel like having video of this even sped up is a little bit tedious. And so I hope that adding the voiceover and reducing the amount of overall time watching that makes it a little bit more pleasant for you. But anyway, I'm just continuing spinning, making this really nice yarn. You can see it building up on the bobbin as I spin. And there I'm doing another plyback sample. It's really good to do that pretty frequently to make sure that you have the right amount of twist in your yarn so that your finished yarn is nicely balanced. I'll talk about that a little bit more later during the plying segments, which we will transition to momentarily. So here I go on my e-spinner plying away. I find it's a lot easier to ply on my e-spinner than it is on a treadle wheel, just because it can go a little bit faster, and plying is a pretty time consuming process of just making sure you have the right amount of twist in your yarn. And I mentioned earlier that you really want to have a balanced yarn, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what exactly that means. So when you're adding twist to your singles, you're adding more twist than the yarn requires to be a stable yarn, because you're plying it, assuming you're plying it. There, you can make just a single yarn, and you want to do a little bit less twist than you would for a plied yarn, because when you ply, you kind of negate some of that spin twist because you're plying in the opposite direction. I don't know all of the physics and rules about how that works, but it does create a nice balanced yarn if you put a little more twist in your singles than are required for a singles finished yarn if you're making a plied yarn. Hopefully that makes good sense. I also find that it's very helpful to set up watching or listening to something, because this process is time consuming, a little bit boring if you aren't occupying your mind with something other than the plying. When you're just beginning, you might want to just stick with plying so that you don't get distracted and start adding way too much or not enough twist. You want to be checking to make sure that your finished yarn is going to be the way you would like it. So I am just plying away here. I'm not going to show the whole process, but I'm showing most of it sped up 4 or 8 times, I forget which, just to show you kind of the buildup of yarn on the bobbin as I ply. And you can see I'm still trying to evenly wind that bobbin just to prevent any, it just makes it easier when you're unwinding the bobbin if it's pretty evenly wound in the first place. All right, friends, here's an update on the Jacques Cousteau hat yarn. It is plied, so this is finished yarn. Just needs to be skeined and then washed, and then I can start knitting. But I think it's going to be good. The hat that Jacques Cousteau wears is a little bit more of a lighter red than this. This is a very deep red, even darker than I think it looks like on the camera, but it's fine. I talked to my dad about it to make sure, and he said that it doesn't matter. He's happy with a red hat, even if it's not a perfect recreation of Jacques Cousteau's hat. And I spun it pretty fine. I imagine this is going to poof up a little bit when I wash it because it was carded, and it'll hold a lot of air, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And it'll still be pretty fine because Jacques Cousteau's hat looks like it's knit out of a fairly fine yarn. It looks, I used the word thin to describe it to my dad, and he was like, it's not thin, it's good, it's a good warm hat. I'm like, well, I didn't mean thin, I just meant the fabric isn't as thick because it's not knit from a very thick yarn. Hopefully that made sense to you guys. I think it made sense to him. But I'm going to go ahead and get this skeined and then washed and then start knitting. But that's the next step in the process. So we'll get to doing that. All right, friends, so here we have our finished yarn all skeined up and ready to be washed. Unfortunately, we are in the midst of some smoky weather because of some fires in Nova Scotia, so I'm not going to be drying anything outside anytime soon, so this is going to be put on the back burner, but I still wanted to show you what this yarn looks like all finished. I'm very happy with it. I think it looks fantastic. You can see there's a little bit of variation, a little bit of heathered texture to the yarn. And I'm really happy with it. My dad's really happy with it, which is what's most important since it is a project for him. And I know I said originally in this video that I was going to make the whole project one video from fiber to finished object. But I think I'm going to wrap up here because I do have to put a hold on this because of the current smokiness outside. I don't want to have stuff drying outside, and I don't like drying inside if I can help it. So I'm planning on waiting for this smoky weather to pass, and then I will get to washing and drying this, and then I will get to designing and knitting a hat. So I think that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you enjoyed watching the process of me designing and spinning and plying this yarn. As I said, I'm very happy with it. I think we did great work over the last couple of days that I've been working on this. And I hope you get some good crafting in today. And I hope that you have a fantastic day. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye, friends.